Madam Chair and members of the Commission, we're now live.
Good evening. Welcome to this meeting tonight. My name is Karen Burdett, and I am the Vice Chair of the HPC, and I will be running tonight's meeting. This is the May 8th, 2024 Historic Preservation Meeting. And as is our custom, I would like our Commission and staff to introduce themselves, beginning on my left.
Zara Nasser.
Jeffrey Haynes.
Julie Pelletier.
Michael Galway.
Mark Dominiani.
Chris Berger, Historic Preservation Staff.
Rebecca Ballo, Historic Preservation Staff.
Dan Brugert, Historic Preservation Staff.
John Lieberts, Historic Preservation Staff.
Thank you. We are going to start tonight with a proposed master plan amendment, the Horrid House Master Plan. Mr. Lieberts, will you please start your presentation?
Yes, thank you. So the purpose of tonight's public hearing and work session is to determine whether the Romeo and Elsie Horrid House in Wheaton meets designation criteria for listing in the Locational Atlas and Index of Historic Sites and the Master Plan for Historic Preservation. Okay, it's on the screen now. Excellent. So overall, staff found that the property meets the designation criteria and requests that the HPC takes the following actions. First, that it finds the house meets the designation criteria as outlined in the county code. Second, recommends that the planning board list the property in the locational atlas. And third, that it recommends that the county council list the property in the master plan for historic preservation. Resources listed to the master plan must satisfy historical and cultural significance or architectural and design significance. The designation process outlined on the bottom of the slides includes hearings at the Historic Preservation Commission, Planning Board, and County Council, who ultimately decides whether a resource is listed. With respect to the public process and outreach, Dr. David Rodenstein called attention to the property and conducted a series of interviews with the descendants of the family in 2017. In 2022, the Planning Department initiated the ongoing University Boulevard Corridor Plan that incorporates the subject property and house. The plan focuses on the stretch of University Boulevard between 495 and Wheaton. Also in 2023, Montgomery Planning highlighted the property and the family as part of the remarkable Montgomery Untold Stories series, and a historic marker will be installed at Wheaton's Veterans Park later this month, honoring the family. In April 2024, staff met with the property owners to discuss the designation process. Next, I'll discuss the resource under evaluation and the proposed environmental setting. So the Romeo and Elsie Horrid House is located at 2118 University Boulevard West, approximately a quarter mile southeast of the intersection of Georgia Avenue and University Boulevard in downtown Wheaton. And it's represented by the red pin on the screen. Romeo and Elsie Horrid built the colonial revival Georgian-style house in 1938. The Horrid family constructed an architecturally impressive dwelling to reflect the success of the locally prominent African-American family. The hipped roof, symmetrically balanced facade, brick veneer, and central door with decorative surround all reflect defining characteristics of the architectural style and, in turn, the wealth and status of the Horrid Sewell family. And here are images of the front of the house and the back of the house. Staff recommends an environmental setting that incorporates the entire parcel, which is about 0.77 acres, conveyed to Romeo and Elsie Horrid in 1938. There's a single non-contributing structure on the property, which is a late 20th century gazebo. I'll give a brief overview of the history of the property. So Elsie Horrid's grandparents, Charles and James Webster, we'll start off with them. The couple married in July 1868 in Montgomery County and first lived in Barnesville. In 1894, the Websters purchased the family's first 1-acre property from George and Kate Sissel and constructed their house. And that property is here outlined in red. The Websters had at least 13 children, including Martha Webster, the mother of Elsie Horrid. And the family utilized the property and the adjacent leased land as a market garden, according to oral history. The Websters joined a growing African-American community in Wheaton. In 1873, African-American residents acquired a single-acre property for Allen Chapel African Methodist Episcopal Church and Cemetery. The church also served as the first school for the African-American children of Wheaton. And towards the end of the 19th century, several African-American families started to acquire property on Wheaton Lane at Chestnut Ridge, and this is near the present-day intersection of University Boulevard and Inwood Avenue. The growing population lobbied for the construction of a purpose-built elementary school, and in 1900, the school board paid $200 for a 1-acre lot from George and Kate Sissel for the construction of a one-room segregated African-American elementary school for the Wheaton community. By 1940, the United States Census specifically enumerated the African-American community at Chestnut Ridge and recorded approximately 21 owners, 11 renters, with a population of 147 persons. So if you look at this map, the green star is the church and cemetery, the orange star is the Wheaton Lane community on the right, the yellow star is the segregated African-American elementary school, and the red arrow points to the future location of the Horad House that had not yet been built. So the Websters were leaders of the African-American community in Wheaton and Montgomery County. Charles Webster participated in local Republican political conventions, advocated and endorsed candidates, and served as a trustee for the Wheaton School. Here is a photograph of the Websters and their house. This house is now demolished. It stands where the present church is, next to the Romeo and Elsie Horad house, or it stood where the present church is. Moving forward in the family's history, Martha Webster, a daughter of Charles and Jane Webster, married Edward Benjamin Sewell in 1897. The couple resided primarily in Washington, D.C., where they raised their 3 children, Elsie, Webster, and Bernard, and Elsie would go on to marry Romeo Horad. So Martha and Edward Sewell acquired their first parcel in Wheaton in 1912. This land, outlined in blue, was between the 1-acre property acquired by her parents in 1894, which is outlined in red, and then to the south, the 1-acre property conveyed to the Board of Education in 1900 for the school. The lot had no direct frontage on University Boulevard, and so therefore an unnamed road from University Boulevard provided access to this lot and to the Wheaton School on the east side of the property. Charles Webster died in 1927 and left his property to his daughter, Martha Sewell. Family tradition notes that the Sewells moved to Wheaton to assist Jane, Martha's elderly mother, with management and upkeep of the land. Martha and Edward now own the entire Wheaton property that would comprise the Romeo and Elsie Horad house. This included the western halves of the 1-acre parcel the family acquired in 1894 and the .991 acre parcel purchased by them in 1912. So this land is represented by the dashed red outline on the map on the left. So you can see the front parcel on what would be University Boulevard, owned by the Websters from 1894, and then to the south of that, where the property bought by Martha and Edward, and the Horad house ends up being that subdivision of that, re-subdivision of that property. So in 1938, the Sewells re-subdivided these stacked lots into 2 distinct parcels that both fronted University Boulevard, as shown on the right. The parents conveyed the western lot to their daughter and their son-in-law, Elsie and Romeo Horad. Family histories noted several residences lived in by family members on the property, but the exact number of houses and outbuildings remains unclear. But you can see on that map on the left that there are multiple buildings on the lots as well. Next, I'll discuss Romeo and Elsie Horad, who the house is named after. So Romeo William Horad is the son of William Fenton Horad and Belle Horad. His parents primarily reside in the District of Columbia, where they raised their large family, including their son Romeo. Romeo attended Lucretia Mott Elementary School, M Street High, Western Case University, and Howard University Law School. At M Street High, Romeo likely met Elsie Sewell, who had graduated from the school the same year. After Elsie graduated from M Street High, she then attended the Minor Normal School, which was later renamed the DC Teachers College, and she worked as a public school teacher in the district for 37 years. So Romeo Horad served overseas in World War I, worked at the Navy's Interdepartmental Social Hygiene Board, and after graduation from law school, joined the District of Columbia's Office of the Recorder of Deeds in 1926. Under the leadership of Recorder of Deeds William Tompkins, Horad modernized the Land Record Index for the District of Columbia and implemented the system that cost $200,000 at the time. In 1939, Horad moved their family, Romeo Jr., Sewell, and Martha, from Washington, D.C. to the subject property in Wheaton and switched his career focus from government to the real estate industry. Racial segregation, in particular racial restrictive covenants, limited opportunities for African American homeownership in Montgomery County and in the Washington, D.C. region. In Montgomery County, this often required African American families to subdivide existing owned property to increase the number of dwelling units. And as I stated before, this is what happens in 1938 as Martha and Edward split their Wheaton property into 2 lots and gift that lot to the Horads. The Horads joined the Montgomery County African American Republicans and served in positions of leadership. Romeo unsuccessfully ran to be a state delegate to the state Republican convention. And here you can see a profile of Horad that ran in the African American newspapers on the left and a Republican voter guide for the 1944 election that advocated for his candidacy and a real estate ad from his office on the bottom. After starting his new career in real estate, Horad achieved immediate success and became a member of the Washington Real Estate Brokers Association. The association consisted of African American real estate brokers who purchased, sold, financed, and managed properties in Washington, D.C. In 1944, he represented the organization and testified before the United States Senate. He explored with the subcommittee the root causes of housing issues, including racial restrictive covenants. Horad stressed the importance of homeownership to the achievement of the American dream and the challenges encountered by African Americans. So Horad's actions extended beyond providing written and oral testimony to legislative bodies. Horad partnered with Italian-American real estate brokers Ralph and Joseph Orculio, and later Charles Hamilton Houston, to purchase houses with racial restrictive covenants on Adams and Bryan Streets in the Bloomingdale neighborhood of Washington, and to resell those properties to African Americans. These actions led to a series of court cases that challenged the legality of racial restrictive covenants, and ultimately the Supreme Court landmark case Shelley v. Kramer and Hurd v. Hodge found racial restrictive covenants to be unenforceable in 1948. In Montgomery County, Horad focused his political and social activism on the improvements of facilities and infrastructure for African American communities. He led the Citizens Council for Mutual Improvement for Montgomery County, an organization that represented more than 2,000 community members. Horad focused on the poor condition of schools for African American students, and the continued pressure applied by the Horads and community organizations led to the construction of 4 equalization schools, one of them being the Taylor School that we designated last year, that provided better facilities and opportunities for African American children in the county. And here's a portrait that ran in one of the African American newspapers in the District of Columbia talking about his potential candidacy for office. The Washington Afro-American recognized Horad on their honor roll with a merit plaque for his outstanding service and his contributions. The paper stated, and I quote, "Romeo W. Horad has been selected for organizing and leading the fight in nearby Montgomery County, Maryland, for better schools, roads, living conditions, and the end of Jim Crow and discriminatory practices. Through his leadership, this group has brought about the erection of 3 new schools now under construction." Horad's civil rights activism culminated in an unprecedented candidacy for political office. No African American had ever been elected to political office in Montgomery County at that time. In 1948, he joined the race for the 5th District Representative of the Montgomery County Council. Newspapers reported interest due to his groundbreaking candidacy, platform of equity, and backing of African American organizations and residents. Ultimately, he lost the race, but his candidacy propelled future involvement of African Americans in local politics. Lastly, for the staff's recommendation, staff finds that the property satisfies 3 designation criteria as outlined in the county code. First, all 3 are under historical and cultural significance. First, the historic resource has character, interest, or value as part of the development, heritage, or cultural characteristics of the county, state, or nation. The Romeo and Elsie Horad House is representative of the development of the African American community in Wheaton. Most of the resources associated with the Wheaton African American community, including Chestnut Ridge, the segregated African American elementary school, and Allen Chapel AME Church, are no longer extant or highly altered. Therefore, the Horad House is a critical resource that represents the early 20th century African-American heritage in this section of the county. Next, the property is identified with a person or groups of persons who influence society. The Romeo and Elsie Horad House is significant for its connections to the Webster Sewell family, and more importantly, its association with the lives of the Horads. Charles Webster, Romeo Horad, and Elsie Horad, along with other members of the family, tirelessly worked to improve the lives of African Americans who lived in Montgomery County and in the region. And lastly, the property exemplifies the cultural, economic, social, political, or historical heritage of the county and its communities. The Romeo and Elsie Horad House serves as a reminder of segregated life in the 20th century in Montgomery County. Romeo and Elsie Horad, like other prospective African-American purchasers or renters, relied on the subdivision of ancestral land in Montgomery County due to the pervasive and widespread discriminatory housing practices against people of color. The Horad family championed the importance of home ownership and deemed it critical that their new colonial revival house reflect the boundless abilities of African Americans when provided opportunities. And lastly, the house retains sufficient historic integrity to express its period of significance. And to go back to the staff's recommendations to sum up, again, staff found that the property meets the designation criteria and requests that the HPC takes the following actions. First, that they find that the house meets the criteria as outlined in the county code. Second, that the board recommends that the planning board list the property to the locational atlas. And lastly, that the HPC recommends that the county council list the property in the master plan for historic preservation. As we stated earlier, this is coming forward as part of the University Boulevard Corridor Plan. So this is the first public hearing in the process for designating the property with the Historic Preservation Commission. And the rest of these public hearings will move forward with the rest of the University Boulevard Corridor Plan, which is tentatively marked to go sometime in the fall and winter of 2024 to the Planning Board, and then the winter or spring of 2025 to County Council. Now I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for staff? There are no questions. Again, thank you very much. That was a very informative staff report. We're going to move on to testimony now, and I'd like to remind anybody that if you want to testify tonight and have not already filled out a form, please pick up a form right down there, fill it out, and hand it to the staff down at that end. So for right now, would the property owner come forward, please, to offer testimony? For the house?
No, this is for the property owner for the Horad House. No worries. Would the property owner like to come and testify or offer anything to say to the commission? Okay, for the record, the property owner has indicated that no, they don't wish to testify at this time, though there may be others in the audience that wish to testify.
Okay. So we'll move on. Are there any adjacent property owners that would like to testify, citizens associations or groups, or elected officials?
Any elected
officials that would like to, would anybody else like to come forward, please? And I'll tell you how much time you have to speak. Nobody wants to talk about this marvelous master plan amendment proposal?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. We'll move right on then. All right, so since there's nobody that wants to testify, I take that as a good omen. The HPC, we can have comments and discussion now. Would anybody like to start off with this? Commissioner Galway, I'm sorry. Commissioner Galway.
This is Commissioner Galway. First of all, I want to compliment you on a very thorough report. It's a very compelling argument, and I think you made it very easy certainly for me to approve it. So thank you.
Anybody else like to add some comments? Commissioners? No? All right. I will second Commissioner Galway's comments and thanks for such a very good report, and it is, you have made it very easy for us to consider this. I think it's important for us, as the commission and as residents of Montgomery County, to remember that a great deal of our history was ignored, and we are now rediscovering quite a few properties and people that need recognition, and the Horrid House and the owners are part of that rediscovery. In preservation gets a bad rap because historically it's always been about beautiful buildings and important people, and we all know that our history is made up of a wide diversity of people, and in many cases quite a few of them have been ignored and forgotten about, even though what they did within the greater community was significant. And their homes and workplaces were not always beautiful architectural monuments. And the Horrid House is one of these examples. It's important that we find these examples and we protect them from loss, because we have lost a great deal of those examples in our county for those people who were not recognized in a timely manner. So today, staff has asked the commission to consider this nomination for the master plan amendment. Could you bring that list back up, please? Thank you. Okay. So we, as the Historic Preservation Commission, we need to vote to find that the Romeo and Elsie Horrid House meets the designation criteria as outlined in 24A of the County Code. Recommend that the Planning Board add the subject district in the locational atlas and index of historic sites, and recommend that the Planning Board request that the County Council approve an amendment to the Master Plan for Historic Preservation to designate the Romeo and Elsie Horrid House as a Master Plan historic site. Would someone like to make a motion? Commissioner Haynes.
Be happy to. I move that the Historic Preservation Commission, in accordance with standards set forth in Section 24A of the Montgomery County Code, recommend that the Romeo and Elsie Horrid House be designated to the locational atlas and index of historic sites per the staff recommendations 1, 2, and 3.
Just do one at a time?
Just vote one at a time.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think we should vote each commissioner to express yay or nay.
Roll call then. Okay, then we'll, do I have a second?
Commissioner Nasser, I'll second.
All right, we're going to do a roll call. Commissioner Nasser?
This is Commissioner Nasser, yay.
Commissioner Haynes, yay.
Commissioner Pelletier, yay.
Commissioner Galway, yay.
Commissioner Diminiani, yay.
And this is Vice Chair Burdett, yay. All right, for the next motion, Commissioner Haynes? You did the locational atlas and index.
I thought,
Did you do-
yeah, I did. I referred to all 3 recommendations, so I think we've covered that. Is that?
Okay, that's
That
good,
is
thank you.
sufficient. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, then we're all set. We've approved. So this will move on then now to, eventually to the county council.
Yes, Rebecca Ballo, for the record, yes, the HPC's recommendation will be incorporated into the draft that goes to the planning board for their consideration, and then we'll also move forward to the county council as part of the master plan amendment.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Lieberts, and thank you for the property owners and everybody else. This is really a significant moment, and we're all very pleased to be able to approve this for nomination. Thank you very much. All right, moving on, we're going to move on to our hops, and we're going to start with those on the consent agenda that can be quickly approved and passed. You'll bear with me. Thank you. And Again, if you are here to testify for any of these hops, please let the staff know. We will be pulling the Carroll Avenue property out for discussion and the Damascus Hills Lane property out for a preliminary. So these are the everything else. And if those aren't why you're here, then please let us know if you want to testify. Okay, so on the hop tonight, we're going to hear. Okay. Have the hops been duly advertised?
This is Rebecca Ballo for the record, and yes, Madam Chair, they were advertised in the April 24th edition of the Washington Times.
Okay. Good. Historic work area permits, starting with 2A at 6710 Westmoreland Avenue, Tacoma Park, the Tacoma Park Historic District. 2C, 15 West Lenox Street, Chevy Chase Village Historic District. 2D at 18 Hickory Avenue, Tacoma Park Historic District. 2E, we're going to hear that one, never mind. 2G at 21210 Martinsburg Road, Dickerson. It's a master plan site. And 2H at 2115 Salisbury Road, Silver Spring, the Linden Historic District.
Madam Chair, hearing no objections, I move that we approve the following historic area work permits in accordance with staff reports based upon the record before us in consideration of the recommendations of the local advisory panels and including the conditions recommended by staff. Hop number 1059492 at 6710 Westmoreland Avenue, Tacoma Park. Hop number 1065230 at 15 West Lenox Street, Chevy Chase. Hop number pending at 18 Hickory Avenue, Tacoma Park.
Mr. Vice Chair, I'm sorry, we do have an update on that hop number for D. It was in the updated agenda. If I may, it's hop number 1068865 for 18 Hickory Avenue.
Thank you. Moving on to hop number 1066539 at 21210 Martinsburg Road, Dickerson. And hop number 1066554 at 2115 Salisbury Road, Silver Spring.
Do I hear a second?
This is Commissioner Dimignani. I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Those hops are approved. And I'd like to thank the people who submitted those hops for making them easy to approve and expedite. Thank you. We will be moving on to the cases we're going to hear tonight. And one is 2E at 7124 Carroll Avenue, Tacoma Park. Is there anybody here to testify for that property? Or, I'm sorry, is there a staff report?
Yes, there is, Madam Chair. Dan Bruckert with the staff report for 7124 Carroll Avenue in Tacoma Park. It's an outstanding resource to the Tacoma Park Historic District. It's constructed circa 1925, and this hop is reviewed under the Tacoma Park Historic District Design Guidelines, Chapter 24A, and the Secretary of the Interior's Standards for Rehabilitation. So the applicants seek retroactive approval to construct a fence to enclose the front and right side yards of the property. So you see here's a photo from November 2021, and then this is from an earlier site visit in February of 2024. Just to familiarize yourself along Carroll Avenue, we have a number of fences that enclose properties. This is to the west of Park Avenue, and then this is looking up Carroll Avenue. You see we have a solid board fence that predates the historic district, and then a series of wood picket fences you see here, and then some site walls and a solid board fence near the intersection of Philadelphia Avenue. So again, this is a 4-foot tall vinyl fence with gates on the front and left side. You can see the side gate here, sort of hidden by the magnolia. And we'll talk about sort of the section that projects all the way to Carroll Avenue shortly. So again, the applicant seeks retroactive approval. Those are to be reviewed as if the work has not been undertaken. The fence encloses most of the front and side yard of the property. Proposed fence is a 4-foot tall vinyl picket fence with a gate on the west, which we saw, and on the front. Staff, in doing research for this, sought out records seeking for a fence permit for the fence along the property boundary between 7124 and 7126 Carroll Avenue. I've found no record of either a fence permit or a historic area work permit. Staff will continue to do research on that, and if necessary, we'll file a notice of violation with the Department of Permitting Services on that. So the typical requirements for fences in front yards in Tacoma Park are that they be no taller than 48 inches, have an open picket design, and are constructed using traditional materials, which means wood, iron, or stone. So staff finds that the proposed placement and design of the fence are consistent with the typical requirements and the character of the district, but finds that the material is incompatible and an inappropriate substitute for wood due to its shiny finish and its inability to develop a patina. The National Park Service developed a framework to evaluate the appropriate use of substitute materials. This is something that the HPC has talked about on an ongoing basis. And the considerations include the unavailability of historic materials, the unavailability of skilled artisans or historic crafts, inadequate durability of the original materials, the replacement of a secondary feature or construction of a new addition, reconstruction of a missing feature, code-required performance, and for enhanced resilience and sustainability. And staff finds that a traditional wood fence would perform as well as vinyl, and that a substitute material is inappropriate for the reasons cited above. So therefore, staff recommends the HPC deny HOP 1066313 under 24A8 as being incompatible with the district guidelines and for contravening standards 2 and 9. And I will answer any questions that you have at this time.
Are there any questions for the staff? If there are no questions, then I'm going to ask the applicant to come forward to provide testimony. Yes. Please turn on the mic till the light comes on. Great. And identify yourself by name, address, and your relationship to the property or the application.
Hi, my name is Timothy Pittman. I am the son of Karen and Russell Pittman, who are the owners of the property. They live at 7124 Carroll Avenue in this property. I live a couple blocks away at 7420 Cedar Avenue, also in Tacoma Park, Maryland.
You'll have 7 minutes to say whatever you like. You can give a presentation, you can just make a statement, or you can just answer our questions. It's entirely up to you if you'd like to tell more of a story about how we got to this point.
Yep. Sure, I'd love to tell a brief story, but then happy to answer any questions, and I brought a couple of additional photos if helpful, but we can get there in a second. Thank you all.
If you have additional photos, you might want to give them to staff now.
Okay. Yeah, I can, well, here, I'll hand them up in a second. I'm not, most of them were covered in your presentation, but sure, you can hand it up.
Okay.
I'll reference it.
Thank you.
Okay, so I already introduced myself. So here on behalf of my parents, Karen and Russell Pittman, they purchased this property at 7124 Carroll Avenue, a multifamily home in 2018, as a plan to downsize as part of their retirement, move into a lower maintenance building, and also have some retirement income from the additional units in the building. They eventually moved in 2020, and this fence was added at that time as part of re-landscaping in front of the house. In the final stages of them moving into the main floor, it still maintains rental properties below. We did not receive any notice or stop work orders around the fence at the time as it was being built. We were not aware of the violation at the time, and in fact, we were only notified of it as part of a recent process to apply for a different historic area work permit for solar panels at the house. I'll stop there to say thanks to Dan in particular, who I've spoken to most, and the HCP for being both helpful stewarding that process as well as helpful unpacking this while we figured out we had a retroactive violation that we didn't know about. So that was a piece of it. Really just three main points, and then happy to make questions. That My parents have been purposeful, long-term stewards of both this house and many houses in the Tacoma Park Historic Neighborhood, so we certainly believe in historic preservation. In fact, 2 of their older houses were recently featured in an exhibit in the historic Tacoma Park storefront, including the Katie Lee Mansion that my mother ran a business out of for 20 years. So we certainly believe in historic preservation and have stewarded many houses in this neighborhood. While we now understand the technicalities of this fence's violation within the historic district, we do still believe it is a respectful integration in the neighborhood, especially because of its directly adjacent context. I saw that Dan added a note, I think since the original violation. I'll get to it a little bit later if we want, but it was our intention to match the existing fence that is on the property line between 7124 and 7126 Carroll Avenue. That fence does not appear to have had any applications, so we thought that it was appropriate, and in fact thought that the different zoning on Carroll Avenue allowed it there, but it was mainly that we had installed it to match that existing fence. So that's kind of a key point there. And then in the third, I would challenge the note in the staff report that there aren't any other fences in the neighborhood. It's true that none appear to have gotten historic area work permits. In addition to the fence on the directly adjacent property, there's also a fence at Carroll and Philadelphia that has clearly been built since the Historic Preservation Commission was established, that is of exactly the same style as this fence, and at least 2 different black vinyl fences that have been built, one on Carroll Avenue directly down the street since the establishment of this commission. So it does actually appear that the main problem we ran into was having a detailed inspection for a different historic area work permit after the building of this fence, since we seem to have not had any other complaints or issues on the property in the 2+ years that the fence has been there. So I would say those are really the key arguments. Happy to have any questions, but again, it really was our intention to continue to upgrade the house, be a positive addition to Carroll Avenue and the Tacoma Park District, and we were trying to match the style of the existing fence next door, which it directly connects to. So that was the goal, and actually consistency with the neighboring fence, as well as, of course, the safety issues for children and pets on a busy street like Carroll Avenue, which was the general goal of installing the fence. I know it was mentioned in the goal, of course, the low maintenance aspects of the fence, in addition to the matching, were certainly a reason for choosing it, especially for people looking to retire into a lower maintenance home. And especially because there is additional wear and tear because it is a multi-unit building. So we also have tenants that go through the property and the yard in addition to my family. So it's for those reasons that we certainly understand the issue now, but we don't believe that the fence is a negative contribution to its neighborhood and immediate context. So we certainly respectfully request that it be allowed to stay versus requiring a modification or replacement, which would not only be costly, but materially wasteful at this point, and result in a more mismatched fence to the neighboring property unless that was addressed in tandem. And not sure if this is the kind of thing this commission discusses, but if it's an appropriate middle ground, we would certainly be happy to add additional landscaping or hedges in front of the fence if the visibility from the street affected your decisions. That is all the pictures that I submitted were just some additional photos of the other existing vinyl fences in the Tacoma Park Historic District. And beyond that, happy to answer any questions or clarifications.
Are there any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Nasser?
I have a question. This is Commissioner Nasser. I have a question about the black fence you just showed us.
Mm-hmm.
Is that metal or?
It's vinyl.
It's metal, right?
No, it's
not-
vinyl. Plastic.
Oh, this is vinyl.
It's a nice replica of a steel fence, but it is a plastic vinyl fence.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Haynes?
I guess my question is, I believe you said that your parents have had other homes, have lived in other homes in the Tacoma Park historic area and were dedicated stewards to those homes. And is it fair to assume that they understood they were buying a historic home in 7124 Carroll Avenue?
There are kind of 2 pieces there. One, so first, we have had a number of historic homes. We've interestingly never gone through a fence process, so we weren't aware that the fence was part of it. So there are a number of things that we knew, but we hadn't gone through a fence. And the second, because of a number of other differences in the zoning as we were buying the house, we thought that Carroll Avenue had a different designation because of the multi-unit zoning for the houses. That was clearly incorrect in retrospect, but we thought that it was allowable under the Historic District guidelines and that Carroll Avenue had different designations than the other houses we had been on. in.
Well, I understand that argument. It seems to me that would have been, that you would have thought to check with the HBC on fence regulation before proceeding with it. While I appreciate the maintenance aspect that you mentioned, but at the same time, you bought a house that's going to require a ton of maintenance of painting, the shingles, the stucco, so that seems a little contradictory. Just an observation. Don't necessarily need to respond to that.
I'd be happy to respond. I mean, the house that they moved out of was a 20-room 1880s Victorian house, so the maintenance was actually much worse. Not that I don't respect the note. In terms of the understanding of the HBC guideline, one thing as I was doing more research on this that I would recommend, even if you go to your HCP website and look for what qualifies, you have to dig a number of pages in to find out that fences qualify. If we, as we did with this project, install a fence as part of a landscaping project, landscaping is listed as things that don't require approval. The list on the first page that says approval requires says things like additions, sheds, things like that. So it's open to interpretation at the time of whether or not you think a fence is an addition, a structure, or a landscaping element.
Thank you.
Commissioner Pelletier?
Thanks. Did your fence company get a permit for the fence? Because you're required to permit a fence in Montgomery County.
I do not believe so, and so that may have been an additional mistake, because again, this was the first fence that we've lived in the neighborhood, but this is the first fence that we have installed in
Okay.
the county, so
Okay,
I don't
thanks.
believe so.
Any other questions? Commissioner Galway?
This is Commissioner Galway. I saw all these fences and I got a little bit confused. You were trying to match an adjacent property fences. Can you explain?
Yeah, the property in the images, if you saw the fence that jutted out further to the street in one of the photos, that's not, that fence that goes kind of horizontally between the two properties was an existing fence at the time of us purchasing the house, and the fence that runs parallel to the street was our addition. So the houses had an existing white vinyl fence that divide the property lines between 7124
And that was the second
7126.
question. Was it also a vinyl fence?
Yes, it is, that is the exact, so that is what we were trying to match. So that vinyl fence that extends to the street was existing at the time of us purchasing the property.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, we will move into discussion amongst the commissioners, if anybody would like to start. Commissioner Nasser?
This is Commissioner Nasser. I wanted to comment about the other fences that you brought today. Unfortunately, we hear this argument a lot that someone else did this, so we thought it is okay to do it. And that's exactly why we don't want to set precedents for future homeowners. And just because somebody did something wrong, we don't want to necessarily repeat it. So to me, unfortunately, that's not a good argument. And I agree with the staff, and I think we should move on to deny the request. Thank you.
Any other comments? Commissioner Haynes?
We look at each case on an individual basis. As Commissioner Nasser said, that yes, there probably are fences that were built illegally or did not get appropriate HOP approval, but that doesn't alleviate, future homeowners from doing the right thing. Our challenge here is does the fence maintain the integrity of the streetscape and the character of the streetscape and the neighborhood, and material is one of the characteristics. And as we've seen in some of the fence examples, particularly the wood fence examples, the aging of fences can be and is often a character defining element. So This is a difficult case because we don't like to make homeowners go backwards. We understand the investment is significant, but at the same time, as a commission, we are here to uphold the regulations and to strive to maintain the quality of historic resources and neighborhoods and streetscapes. So that is how we have to look at this.
Are there any other comments from commissioners? If not, I'll close up. This retroactive hops are always difficult for us. We, of course, would prefer to have applicants come forward early on, give a phone call, give a brief check. Calling HPC staff, of course, is first, but there's also the Tacoma Park Historical Society. There's the Montgomery County Permit Office. There's a lot of different places you can go and check to see if a permit is required. As you are prior residents of Tacoma Park, you know that Tacoma Park is a mostly historic district. It's quite extensive, but the historic district doesn't cover all areas, but definitely down where you live, and that comes with a great deal of regulation and oversight on what you get to do on your properties. Now, that said, we are always dealing with retroactive hops, and particularly fences in Tacoma Park. Tacoma Park, though, is very strict about the fencing. Vinyl fences are not typically allowed in the Tacoma Park Historic District or any other historic district in the county because of its material characteristics, the shininess of it, the obvious, plastic quality of it, with the one exception of the photograph you provided of the black one, which apparently is quite difficult to determine from a photograph or by passing if it's metal or plastic, but the white ones are pretty obvious because of the way they reflect car lights, and Carroll Avenue is a primary route through Tacoma Park. And these fences, the plastic ones, don't develop a patina. They don't age like a painted wood fence. The paint does age, and it will, develop that patina. And because of that, we do discourage plastic fences in the historic districts of the county. And the staff did the research, and the HPC has never approved a vinyl fence in any of the historic districts. And if you were coming forward tonight with an application to install a plastic fence, we would not allow it. And in fact, it never would have gotten in front of us because staff would have warned you off and said, no, you need to find another material. So with that, I would not approve this retroactive hop because it would have never been approved if it had gone through the process. And that is irregardless of how many other people in Tacoma Park have put up vinyl fences incorrectly without their permit, without the appropriate oversight or permits. We have not approved one. So that said, I would ask for a commissioner. Oh, I have one question for staff, though, before we do this. Would the replacement fence be eligible for tax credit? It is not.
Unfortunately, no, it's not.
Darn. Okay. Then would someone like to make a motion on this retroactive hop application? Oh, well, Commissioner Pelletier has a question for staff.
Sorry, I should have asked this before. Is there any sort of time limit on things that get built that are out of compliance?
In statute, no, because the requirement is that the applicant get a permit. So I think the HPC and staff have generally applied a relative reasonability. I mean, we don't, we recently went through a number of steps for 6710 Westmoreland at the last meeting, where a whole number of things had been changed on that house without a hop. It was difficult to place a time limit on a timeline on those, but we also recognized that the work had been completed by a previous owner. So I think that the HPC recognizes that sometimes this can be burdensome, but we also aren't there. We aren't out there actively policing them, and that's part of them, is that when these things are brought to our attention.
And that was my other question.
I have one thing to add
Okay.
to that. This is Rebecca Ballo for the record. So once the HPC denies a hop, and then it becomes an enforcement issue with the Department of Permitting Services. So then the timeline is dictated by the court schedule, because once there is a notice of violation and a citation, and then the county attorney puts the item on the district court docket to move forward for further enforcement action. So it tends to be however long the court schedule takes to get the item, to move forward onto the docket, if the owner does not on their own bring it into compliance. So that can take several weeks, several months sometimes to get a case in front of the judge.
Oh, yeah, I was thinking in terms of, this fence has been here for a few years. I was just curious if there is any sort of statute of limitations on things that get built that are out of compliance. But like Dan said, you're not out patrolling.
No, we do not have our own inspectors, and even the inspectors that work for DPS and DHCA, they operate on a complaint
Okay.
basis.
And my other question was, if this had gone in for a permit, which it should have, just a regular building permit, like fence permit, do you guys get a heads up from the county
So
in a historic district?
what would have ordinarily happened is they would have applied for a fence permit without a historic area work permit, and then the DPS system would have actually flagged it as a historic property and would have said, this requires a historic area work permit.
Okay.
Is there one?
Yeah.
And they would not have issued a fence permit without an approved historic area work permit.
Got it, okay, all right.
So I'll follow up separately. So that is a separate enforcement item for DPS, that there isn't a so there isn't a hop and there isn't a fence permit.
Right,
So those two issues are going to be tracked by the DPS inspectors to bring the property into compliance. So also from their perspective, even though there isn't, this happened a couple years ago, but they still need a fence permit.
right, okay, thank you.
I have a quick question for staff. In your report, you noted that HPC has never approved a vinyl fence anywhere in the county, in any of the historic districts. Have we ever approved a retroactive hop on a vinyl fence that you are recalling?
To my knowledge, no. So I did not review the applicant's packet. I circulated that amongst the commissioners. Once this is done, I am happy to go review those and see, but to my knowledge, no, we have not approved a retroactive hop for a vinyl fence in any instance. I'm in my 9th year with working for the commission, and I have no record of that happening.
Thank you. All right. Would anybody like to make a motion on this hop? If not, I will. All right. I move the Historic Preservation Commission, in accordance with the standards set forth in Section 24A of the Montgomery County Code, deny this retroactive hop 1066313 at 7124 Carroll Avenue, Tacoma Park, in the Tacoma Park Historic District, finding the project does not or meets the standards set forth in 24A 8A, namely the project is inappropriate via it does not meet the architectural historic material requirement, and would be inconsistent to the preservation and ultimate protection of the historic site and historic district, and it violates or contravenes local guidelines if applicable. Do I have a second?
This is Commissioner Pelletier, I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Are there any in opposition, saying nay?
I
or-
abstain.
And you, there, Commissioner Haynes is abstaining from the vote.
The motion carries 5-0 to 1.
Thank you. Staff will help you work through what you have to do now. We are sorry that we had to vote this way, but we do have to protect and preserve the guidelines for Tacoma Park as well as for the county. And, you know, come forward and check anything else you want to do with the properties you're involved with, just so we don't do this again.
Okay.
Okay?
May I ask a question, or I guess I could follow up later? I think our biggest question is going to be, since our goal was to match the property. Oh, it's on. Is it not working? Sorry. I mean, I think our biggest question, but I'm sure we'll understand next steps, is going to be, given that it was our goal to match and actually connect to unmatching fence next door, unless that property is also under a similar mandate, I'm not exactly sure how we would rebuild it in a way that isn't much worse looking, given the matching issue, since that fence along the property line is known. So we can follow up on that, but that would just be that's a question we're going to have.
This is Rebecca Balla for the record. So Dan Bruckert will follow up with you about that. And for the rest of the commission, and then also for you, we are doing we intend to move forward also with enforcement against the
Okay.
existing property. If it seems as if that was also done without permits, and if that is indeed the case, then we will also move forward. And I know that it is our goal, Dan's goal, to work to make sure that the fences do match each
Okay.
other, that there is a pleasing aspect to the streetscape, and that the work can be coordinated as closely as possible so that everybody comes into compliance and has, a good-looking streetscape that everybody is happy with.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I'm going to ask if we can pause the live feed so I can get the applicant for the preliminary consultations checked in. They're joining us over Teams.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Madam Chair and members of the commission, we are back live. It is the same applicant for both of the preliminary consultations. They're joining us again remotely. They are muted with their camera off, but he will be prepared to give testimony whenever you call him, Chair Burdett. But for now, we have Chris ready to go.
Okay, and if the staff would like to provide a staff report for this preliminary consultation, thank you.
Yes, this is Chris Berger. This is a preliminary consultation for the farmhouse building at the Resin-Bowman Master Plan Historic Site. The subject property measures 9.73 acres and includes a number of outbuildings. The farmhouse, which is labeled dwelling on the map over here, is on the west side of the property next to the loop driveway. The property was designated in 2009 as a Resin-Bowman Master Plan Historic Site. The farmhouse is a full Victorian-style building built sometime around 1900. It's reviewed under the Montgomery County Code, the Secretary of the Interior Rehab Standards, and the Damascus Goshen Historic Resources Master Plan Amendment. This photo is from vintageaerial.com. Thank you, John, for finding this. It shows the farmstead in 1973. The upper half of the right side elevation of the farmhouse is visible in the foreground here. As mentioned, the property was designated in 2009. The Department of Housing and Community Affairs condemned the building in 2021. The current owners purchased the property later that year. In 2022, the HPC approved or provided a preliminary consultation and then later approved a HOP to build a mudroom on the rear elevation, build a new rear deck, replace the siding with lime plaster, and build a 2-story rear addition with a moss and succulent covered roof, and repair the attic windows, install new 2/2 true divided light windows, paneled doors, and a standing seam metal roof. So work hasn't started, so the county reissued the abatement and corrective work order in March of this year. As part of this application, the applicant proposes the following: demolition of the existing 2-story addition and replacing it with a new 2-story addition with a 1-story mudroom and a rear deck, replace the woodlap siding with similar siding, and a number of window and door alterations, which we'll get into. Here's a recent aerial view of the farmhouse from Connect Explorer. The image on the left is facing north, and the image on the right is facing south. The additions to be removed on the back are these 2 shed-roofed areas here, where the mouse is pointed to. And here are some recent views of the building. On the left is the front and left side elevations. On the right, we have the front and right side elevations. Photo on the left shows the left side and rear elevations. And the right photo shows the rear and left side elevations. Here is the proposed floor plan with the new construction areas outlined in red. This includes the deck, which was to be built over here, and a new back entry porch. So all of these before photos, which will be on the left side of the screen in the series, are from 2021, before the windows were boarded up and there were no leaves on the trees, so they're a lot easier to see. The only changes on this elevation are the removal of the gable window up here, and the chimney stack is not drawn. I don't know if that's a drafting error, but staff would oppose removing this chimney stack and filling in that gable window. It also looks like the windows went from 2/2 in this photo to 1/1 in this image. Again, that may be a drafting error. For the entire house, staff recommends that the existing 2/2 wood sash windows should either be repaired or replaced in kind if necessary. Moving on to the right side elevation, you can see the new rear addition and entrance. This is the red box. And starting from the top, it looks like the window and the gable end, marked in yellow here where it should be, has been removed. The single sash window went to, or single window over here went to a double window here. Staff opposes those 2 changes. The casement window will be replaced by a sash window. Staff supportive of that. And also, This is a new window, but the 1973 aerial does show a window in this location, so staff is supportive of restoration of that window. Down on the first floor, the door will be shifted over, and this window here will be enclosed, and two new windows will be added. Staff would prefer that the door and windows stay as seen in the 2021 photo. Throughout this elevation, shutters will be added to each of the windows. Staff is okay with that as long as the shutters are correctly sized and traditionally mounted. Moving on to the rear elevation, another gable window is proposed for removal, which again staff opposes, and the existing windows and doors will be replaced with paired sash windows. Staff seeks single sash windows in these locations. On the new construction, which is outlined in red, you can see the low pitch roof and the paired windows. We would like those new windows to also be single and not be paired like what is proposed, and the rhythm of the new window should match the rhythm of the existing windows on the house. Left side elevation. Staff doesn't favor grouping the windows like is on the new construction as proposed here. Again, single windows is preferred, and on the existing construction, all the windows will either be removed or new ones added, and staff would like this existing pattern to be retained if possible. So to summarize staff's findings from the report, staff finds the size, scale, and massing of the new construction is appropriate for the historic resource. Staff does have concerns about the low roof pitch on the addition and seeks input from the HPC on an alternative solution. A flat membrane roof or a standing seam cross gable roof that matches the pitches of the existing gable roofs may be better alternatives in staff's opinion. As I've mentioned, existing windows should be repaired or replaced in kind. Staff believes that no window opening should be altered or created on elevations that will remain, unless a documented window opening is to be restored, as to be the case with that window on the right elevation that will be restored. Again, any newly installed windows on both the existing building and proposed addition should be 2/2 and placed individually and match the rhythm of the existing windows. Shutters should be traditionally mounted and sized appropriately for the building or for the window. And at the existing wraparound front porch, staff encourages the applicant to restore the existing wood columns. The porch floor and stairs are missing, so the replacement floor should be wood, tongue and groove, laid perpendicular to the wall of the house. The porch piers appear to be pebble dash, and staff would support replacement with either structural stone or stone cladding to match the material of the building's original foundation. And finally, staff supports replacement of the wood siding. The unpainted lap siding has a 5-inch reveal. It is not original to the home's construction and is unpainted, so it does not appear to be salvageable. Staff recommends the replacement lap siding be painted wood. This is the list of items to be included in the HOP application. First, as-built drawings. The second bullet, new construction drawings. Third bullet, window and door schedule. Fourth bullet, a detailed site plan. And lastly, spec sheets for all new features. And staff seeks HPC feedback on the rear addition's location, size, scale, and massing, the proposed roof pitch on the addition, and any potential alternative solutions, the design and materials of the replacement doors and windows, the proposed grouping, removal, placement, and materials on both the existing construction, the windows on the existing construction and proposed windows, the proposed shutters and potential alternatives, the appropriate replacement materials at the wraparound porch, including the porch floor, columns, stairs, and piers, the appropriate materials for the proposed rear porch, and anything else you would like to weigh in on. Any questions for staff?
Any questions for Commissioner Galway?
I've got two questions. The first, the home, the range says 1787 to, is it 1868? Is that the home? I'm trying to understand what the original components of the house was. It the L? Was it the front bar and the one dog leg?
I believe that those 7th or 18th century dates refer to when the land was first inhabited and farmed. The house itself likely dates to the late 19th century or very early 20th century.
And it was those the two pieces that were built originally?
Yeah, yes, everything was built at that time period.
Except for that back addition? Or was that back addition, was that also?
No, that was a later addition. I don't know the exact date
but
of
it
that,
was
but yes.
significantly later?
Maybe mid-20th century,
Okay.
early 20th century.
Okay. And then this photo is a good example. It looks, is it, the window's 2/2 and the sash are up? Or, because it almost looks like it's 2/1 in some cases. And
Yeah, unfortunately, appears there was a lot of vandalism on the property, and that's probably why the windows are currently boarded up. So it looks like the 2/2 windows, the bottom sashes, have either been knocked out or just, just completely missing.
Okay, okay. But you're pretty
Pretty
sure it was
confident
2/2?
that, yes,
Okay.
originally 2/2.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I know, on the left one. Thank you.
Any more questions for staff? This is Commissioner Burdett. So the two preliminary consultations for this property are basically everything you just described. They just got broken out into two.
No, the
Okay.
second preliminary consultation will be for a separate building, the milk house on the property.
Ah. Okay. So we are basically only talking about 3B tonight?
We're talking about 3A with this application. 3B is for the milk house. So
For the milk.
we'll do that after discussion on the farmhouse.
Okay.
And I can show the map to clarify where or I can show this aerial. This is the farmhouse. This is the discussion for this preliminary. The milk house is over here. We'll discuss that in 3B, the next preliminary.
I have a question for Ms. Ballo on procedure. Should we go straight into the staff report on the milk house or break this up into two completely separate?
I would recommend breaking this up into two separate things because the house is in anticipation of filing a building permit, but the milk house is retroactive material that is currently the subject of an enforcement issue with DHCA and DPS. And we would like to generate, two separate reports for the applicant so they can take care of these discreetly from each other, if possible.
Okay, so since there are no more commissioner comments or questions, I can move directly into asking the applicant to speak.
Yes,
Virtually.
yes. He can present anything he wishes about the rehabilitation plans for the house.
Okay. The applicants, I'm going to ask you to speak to your HOP, or your preliminary, I'm sorry. And you will have 7 minutes for the house at this point, and then we'll, as Ms. Ballo said, we'll deal with the milk barn in a second, completely separate discussion. So if you'd like to speak to us, please. And please identify yourself and your relationship to this preliminary. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I'm Dan Ferenzi, and this is my wife, Allie, owners and primary applicants for this preliminary.
So we are speaking about the house at this point, and you have 7 minutes to give a presentation, to make any statement you like, or answer our questions. So please just
Sure.
let us know.
Thank you, ma'am. Yeah, I think we'll just open up with a couple comments, but then I think a dialogue, question and answer would be great. I don't have anything to present. So first of all, thank you to Rebecca. Thank you very much to Chris for the staff work. Thank you to the commission here for all your help getting us on the right path. We definitely appreciate everything you've done in the past. I don't think we would even own this property if not for the Historic Preservation Committee. So thank you. I'd just like to baseline our last known touch point was 2 years ago when we received approval to go forward with a straw bale renovation of this house with architect Siggy. Unfortunately, those plans fell apart. So we had to take some time to kind of reconsider our plan of action to get this property completely restored and livable. So while we were looking for a new architect and some new building plans, we decided to pivot to traditional construction processes for this house, just to go back to a standard stick frame with wood clapboard. And while we were kind of looking at new architects and new designs and everything else, we decided to pivot to the bank barn because there was considerable decay that we hadn't really seen before. So we moved to those barns, we worked on that, and then while I was doing that and kind of doing our staff work, our market research for the house, we got orders to Texas on active duty military. So that's where we are today. We've moved down here 7 months ago. We'd like to kind of get our construction plans and loan finalized while we're here, get that shovel ready before we move back to Maryland, and then retire out of the military and reside here in Montgomery County. So that's our last touch point in our way ahead. And I appreciate the staff report, and I think we could open it up for discussions if you have any specific questions of me, or if I need to give any comments on the recommendations, I'm happy to do so.
Any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Haynes.
I guess my questions are, I assume you've seen the staff's comments, and what are your feelings about the staff comments, in particular the window fenestration comments?
Yes, sir. Generally supportive. I think we really want to do what the Preservation Commission wants. I do, whether it's 2/2 or 1/1, that's fine. We don't plan on taking out those gable windows. They just weren't included. I think my only potential disagreement is on the rear addition, which is clearly not original to that cross gable. I think some distinguishing features between that and the original gable house would be historically appropriate. I think we could change the siding and also maybe change the window design to just make a clear delineation between the more original cross gable early 20th century and then the later addition. But I think that's up for discussion for sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Commissioner Pelletier.
Thanks. This entry on the back, is that going to be your main entry, or are you still, I guess the foyer is still there. So this back porch, is that your, like, familiar family entry? Like, and the front is going to be the formal entry?
Yeah, that's correct, ma'am. Yeah, we have a design in the back for a mudroom entrance, which leads into the kitchen and then flows into the dining and living areas. There will be a formal entry with a foyer out front, but I think this would be our main family entrance in the rear.
Okay, thanks. One other question. These drawings are pretty basic, the elevations that you have included. Have you seen like a 3D rendering of what this addition is going to look like? Has your architect provided that?
No, ma'am, we haven't done any of the 3D renderings yet. I'm familiar with that, but our architect decided to go a different direction, and we were kind of looking for some other alternatives. So currently don't have an architect, but we can probably get more detailed drawings, certainly.
Oh, how'd you get these drawings if you don't have an architect? Did you do them?
Well, they were initially the design from Siggy, from our architect, and then I got an Adobe PDF and played around with it a little bit.
Okay, I got it. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Commissioner Haynes has another question.
Yeah, the footprint of the guess the kitchen mudroom, that's the original footprint that was there? You're not changing that footprint? Other than the
Well,
proposed addition?
that's correct, sir. Yeah, if you can see that small little addition adjacent to that back porch, those would be the two changes to the current footprint, as well as the deck. I mean, there wasn't a deck there in the 1980s. It's
Right.
gone now.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions? If not, we can open this up for discussion. Would anybody like to start this off? Commissioner Galway?
First of all, I just want to thank you for being a steward of this lovely home. I mean, we look at it today and see these photos and think, it's a lot of work. And I know you guys, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears will go into fixing it, but I'm just thankful that there are folks like yourself who will take on a task like this, because I can just envision what this will look like when you're ready to move in, when you've retired from the military and move in. So thank you for that. I think one of the things that I certainly support and agree with your idea of distinguishing the new addition from the old, but I would caution you, as we often caution others, you don't want to drive up to this property and see a late 1800s home or even earlier and then turn the corner and see something like what's on the back of the house right now with all those wild, large window areas and sliding doors, and it just looks, it's awful. And so I think that as you move forward, you do want to respect the old, the old styles, try to use some of the elements without trying to match it to the point where you're trying to hide the fact that it's an addition. So respect the age of the home, and try, as you turn on the left side and the rear side and the right side, to come up with something that really does respect the old, but maybe it's in the finishes or the surfaces or the materials. You can do that. You can distinguish and still make it look like it belongs as part of this original home. So thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Anyone else with just up for discussion? Commissioner Haynes?
Get yourself a good architect. Get yourself some good existing condition plans, and then I am in agreement with all the window and fenestration comments by staff. Actually, I'm pretty much in agreement with the entire staff commentary. The back portion, the massing of the back portion of the kitchen mudroom doesn't complement the historic resource, and that's kind of unfortunate, because it is such the historic portion is so elegantly proportioned, and that is totally lost on the rear and side elevations. And while we appreciate having some distinction between the historic home and new construction, at the same time, this is sort of so awkwardly masked that it's not great, and not to mention the proportions of windows, the proportions of that entry portico are just kind of out of whack with the historic resource. So that's a lost opportunity that you don't want to lose if you're going to invest what you're going to invest in this house. So it's worth getting the right design professional who is sympathetic to the historic fabric and character of the house. Massing wise, that's why I was wondering if the footprint had changed, but you're working with the existing footprint that was there, and I appreciate that. But I would ask you to look at some different roof lines other than this very large, was essentially a hipped roof that has a ridge that's probably 40 feet long. That's just asking for problems down the road. From a construction point of view, it's not both architecturally interesting or appropriate, and I think from a construction point of view, will yield issues down the road. So I think you need to better document the house. Architecturally, these drawings don't bring out the character of the house, and I, for one, am very sensitive to that. And looking at these drawings, you're not helping us to help you with crappy drawings. So that's my commentary. I don't support the project as currently submitted, and when you hire a good architect, I'm sure he or she will take care of that. Thank you.
Okay. Any other? Yes, Commissioner Demiani.
Dominiani, yeah, this is Commissioner Dominiani. I'd like to agree with the fellow commissioners, all the statements made so far, in support of staff recommendations as well. I don't believe we talked about siding and porch materials, which I believe was asked for, feedback from the HPC on. I do agree that that replacement lap siding should be painted wood. I think that'll be appropriate for this house, particularly as it looks now. In addition, I also agree that black locust decking or some other form of wood decking would be appropriate for this home, both for the wraparound porch and I think for the proposed rear porch as well. An architect is definitely going to dial in, I believe, a lot of these details, but I wanted to make note that those materials are probably going to be preferred by us for when it comes through for an application later on. Thank you.
And if there are no more comments, I will finish this up. The other commissioners have made very good points. I would also suggest that when you look for your architect, get someone with a lot of experience with historic restoration. You're going to need it with this house, considering you've basically got a shell now. I agree with all of the staff's comments and recommendations. I am most concerned about the you're using the existing addition off the back, which is a big, large square. And I'm concerned about the roof on that big square. That's a lot of space and a very small slope. And I'm wondering if by preserving that existing square, you're doing yourself a disservice. And it might, as one of your early exercises with your architect, consider what would happen if you ripped that whole box off and started fresh. And you might find that what you would end up with might be a better, more serviceable plan for you, as well as something that's more appropriate for an addition on this house. So we look forward to you coming back with some more detailed drawings prepared by an architect who can really serve you in this process you're going to be going into. When you, this is going to be a labor of love and stress. And the HPC and staff will be here to support you as you go through it. We had a conversation earlier in our early discussion before the meeting about tax credits. And I do know that this property will be available on the exterior for the county tax credits. There won't be any interior tax credits simply because you don't have an interior left. But we wish you the best of luck and look forward to your next a preliminary when you come through, because you will be needing another preliminary before you go any further with that. And with that, we can move on to your barn. Is there a staff report?
Yes, there is. This is a preliminary consultation for the Milk House building on the subject property. To clarify, this application initially was to be a retroactive HOP, but after the agenda was posted, the applicant requested it be switched to a prelim to get your feedback before proceeding with a HOP application. Again, the property was designated in 2009. The vernacular style milk house is on the east side of the property, just north of the dairy barn over here. Both buildings were constructed in the later 1930s. It's reviewed under the Montgomery County Code and the Secretary of the Interior Rehab Standards. The aerial from 1973 shows the milk house before the window on the front elevation was removed and that doorway was installed. Property was designated in 2009. Current owners again purchased in 2021. And a couple months ago, the county issued corrective orders for the unpermitted Airbnb operating in the milk house. So that's when the alterations to the building were discovered. These are the changes to be discussed. We have replacement doors, windows, and light fixtures. New window openings were added in the gable ends, and composite windows were installed there, and a fence was constructed. Here are some older photos. The applicant provided the photo on the left from November 1985 that shows the sliding door already installed on the front of the building, and the photo on the right was taken by staff in 2008. All these photos were from 2021. The sliding doors were mostly gone by then, and I'd like to point out this wood-paneled screen door in the middle photo here, which you can't see too well. This likely was installed in the dairy barn or the milk house and may date to the time of construction. It's a paneled wood door with openings at the top. Staff thinks this could provide a model for the egress door installed on the milk house. We'll get into that more shortly. These are the existing conditions. Again, changes to the building were the replacement doors, windows, and light fixtures, and new window openings were added in the gable ends in the front here and then in the back. So first, for the doors and light fixtures, the applicant installed a composite sliding door on the front elevation. It's a shaker gliding 2/3 light door, and it replaced remnants of a double metal sliding door. This is a fiberglass door on the right side elevation. It's 4-paneled with 2 square lights on the top. And the applicant replaced 2 light fixtures on the front to either side of the sliding doors, which are circled in red, and then 1 light fixture on the right side elevation at the door. The applicant installed 4 new composite Anderson Fibrex 1/1 sash windows, 2 on the right side elevation and 2 on the left side elevation. And according to the applicant, the pre-existing wood sash windows were installed in the storm window track, and these new composite windows were installed in the pre-existing metal window track. So the wood upper sashes actually remain in place. You can see the original wood sashes, and only the bottom sashes were removed for those windows, and then an all-new composite window was added behind. A complete composite window was added behind. 3 of the wood sashes have 1 light, and the 1 sash window on the left side elevation, this one has the six lights. The applicant said he installed the window openings and Anderson Fibrex windows measuring 18 by 24 inches in the gable ends to provide light and ventilation to the building. This approximately, there's trim around the windows, approximately 6 inches. There's a piece here that extends a lot more than 6 inches, but the fence consists of 2 sections of untreated wood posts and rails standing approximately 4 feet tall and spanning about 25 feet. It delineates the boundary of the brick patio in front of the milk house from the farmyard. So staff findings. Staff supports the composite material of the door because it was placed in an opening created before the building's designation as a master plan historic site. The door is compatible to the design of the milk house, as the length and width of the lights approximate the size of the windows present on the building, and it is compatible overall with the building. Staff finds that the simple lights to be compatible to the building and supports these replacements. Staff supports the openings and windows in the gable ends because they are new to the building and did not replace previously installed windows, and they are appropriately sized for the building. The windows are placed in the wood siding and not the historic masonry. Staff found a photo of a traditional milk house, again, thank you, John, which is in the image shown on this screen, that had a window in the gable end. So there is precedent for windows in milk house gable ends. And finally, staff supports installation of the fence because its simple design is compatible to the property and it's also easily removable. Staff does not support replacement of the 4 sash windows because the windows on the Milk House were originally wood and were wood for most of the building's nearly 90-year-old lifetime. Staff is of the opinion that the windows should remain wood. The windows on the right side elevation were later alterations that appear to have been replaced doors in those openings, but based on the clapboard siding infill material present at the bottom of the openings, the windows have been present for multiple decades and predate the building's historic designation. The applicant should either install the lower wood sashes to match the existing upper sashes or install all new wood windows that match the light pattern on the existing upper sashes. Moving on, staff does not support installation of the fiberglass door. It's a type frequently installed on contemporary residential buildings. Staff does not find the door design and material appropriate for the historic agricultural outbuilding. No archival photos exist of the prior doors, but staff is confident the door was originally wood when installed in the 1930s and recommends the replacement door be constructed of that material and be appropriately designed for the building. The wood-paneled screen door that I pointed out in the dairy barn, in the photo laying against the dairy barn, it may have been installed on this building or the dairy barn, and staff recommends that the applicant installed a wood door similar to that door in the image. Staff also does not support the size of the trim around the new windows and the gable ends, so they should be reduced in width to a more compatible size. We request feedback on the following: the replacement windows on the left and right side elevations, the replacement doors, both the front and the right side elevation door, the window openings and the gable ends, the windows that were installed in those gable end openings, and the trim around the windows and the gable end, the replacement lights, the fence, and any other comments you may have. Any questions for staff?
This is Commissioner Burdett. I'll start with a question. The replacement windows that are placed inside of the existing wood frame, where the bottom sash is gone but the top sash is still there, if the bottom sash was still there, would those vinyl windows be considered a storm window, which would be acceptable, wouldn't it? Not? Yeah.
That's a tough one.
This is Rebecca Ballo for the record. So just so I understand your question, are you asking if the lower sash still remained, but they had been installed on the inside?
No, if the exterior wood sashes were both in place, and then this vinyl window was placed inside of that, would it be considered a storm window?
Like an Indo type window?
Well, most storm windows in historic properties are typically just a big sheet of glass or plexiglass, and might have muttons at the appropriate locations. But for expedience for them to get their property up and renting, if they replace the wood sash, would the interior vinyls be considered a storm, or is it not appropriate to consider them as a storm?
I don't know that I quite follow your question, but I'll just say anything installed, this was a close call for us, right? And the only thing that made it an exterior alteration is the fact that the lower sash is missing and then was removed. So if the wood window were there in its entirety, right, if here's the outside envelope of the building, right, here's the wood window, and if they'd installed something inside, but both the upper and lower sash were still there, we wouldn't be talking about this because it would just be an interior alteration, and we don't regulate the interior. That's why, for example, sometimes people will cut the chains or the ropes with the pulleys and install those terrible like aluminum tracks, but still keep the sashes there. So they'll nail the upper sash into place, and then the lower sash just moves up and down on that metal track. That's all kind of an interior alteration to it, and we wouldn't see that either. But that's also kind of a really close call because you're messing with the components of the window. To answer your question, that would be all interior, and we wouldn't be talking about it.
If there was a wood sash on the exterior
If there were,
in place.
if there were if the original lower sash on the exterior were there and had remained in place, we wouldn't be talking about this. It would be all interior work.
Okay. My next question, if this is in the report, I apologize, but did they get any permits for this before they did the work?
No, they did not.
Okay.
Now, but that said, I don't believe you need a permit from DPS for window and door alterations.
And that's all that was going on, was window and doors?
Yes.
Interesting. Okay, thank you. That's all the questions I have for staff. Now, if anybody else would, yes, Commissioner Pelletier.
I just want to confirm that the windows that you're showing now, all of that opening infill was already there. The clapboard and the big thick trim around the opening.
Yeah, correct. It
Okay.
was done well before it was designated as historic.
Okay.
This window on the left, it originally was a doorway
Right.
when it was
right.
operating as a milk house in conjunction with the dairy barn, but that was many decades ago. It
Okay.
looks like it's been
And there's a
infilled.
couple of those, right?
Yeah, there's two
okay.
here. I can go back
Okay.
to all the photos, but
And
these
so,
two on the left.
are you asking them to replace the lower sashes on these windows?
Install a lower
A
wood
lower
sash.
sash.
Or if it's not possible and they have to remove the upper sash, then put in a complete wood window.
Wood window, okay. I think that's it. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? If not, if the applicant would please, again, it's your turn to make a presentation, to make a statement, or answer questions, make your case. You'll have 7 minutes, so please feel free to go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, this is Dan Ferenzi, the owner here of 9220 Damascus Hills Lane. Thanks again for that great staff report and for those recommendations and findings. I think had those wooden sashes been there, we would have left it there. They were no longer there. So if we can find replacements and put those in there, I think that would be a great cost saving metric to meet the requirements, and we'll definitely look into that. Yeah, the fiberglass door, the size of the trim, we're definitely willing to make those adjustments. This was primarily a cost saving metric for us. Again, as we look to minimize paying a mortgage and a rent, once we could maybe get on this property, have a foothold there to stay in. So that's why we were putting in those doors and windows. So I think that's really my only comment. The replacement of all these things could certainly add up. If we have to get new wood windows, those can be expensive, just based off of some initial market research. And so we would definitely like to prioritize our efforts to get this, we want to get this in compliance, but shift our focus now to the main house. Both our budget and schedule efforts should be directed there. So that would be our perspective, but happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for the applicant? No? Okay, we're going to open it up for discussion. Would anybody like to start? Commissioner Pelletier.
Can you put the list back up of the questions for the commission? Okay. All right, replacement windows. So, okay. I'm okay with the replacement windows, but I would like to see those wood sashes be put in on the lower parts of the windows. The replacement door, I don't have an issue with the ones in the front, like the big barn door. The side, I think it's kind of out of view. I don't love it, but it doesn't totally offend me. I like the window openings in the gable ends, but I agree about the trim. I think it's too fat. And the replacement lights, if there were already lights there, I think what you put in, they're pretty low key. I like the fence. It's made out of wood. I think my biggest issue is with the fat trim around the gable windows. And yeah, the door, I don't know, the doors don't bother me so much. So I could support this retroactive hop. Thank you.
Any other comments from anybody? Commissioner Haynes.
Thank you. Only a couple. Generally, I support the sliding composite doors on the front. I think stylistically they are appropriate. I agree about the window trim. It's a bit overkill. The side door, that 6-panel door, is out of character with the barn, and if it could be similar to the sliding doors stylistically, I think that'd be more appropriate. The horizontal, I believe, German shiplap siding under the windows, for me, conflicts with the masonry, and I'd almost rather you, instead of having a horizontal siding there, maybe it's just a paneled, similar to the sliding door panel, maybe just create out of composite trim a panel there rather than the horizontal German shiplap siding. I think is out of character with the barn, and just kind of stands out for me. I could be okay with the vinyl windows, although I'd prefer that they be composite or a clad, wood-clad unit would be my preference, but I think I could support the windows as you've installed them. I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Anybody else have any comments? If not, I'll finish this off. First off, I just want to confirm a comment Commissioner Haynes just made is that shiplap siding predates the designation of this property, correct?
Correct,
So
yes.
it's not up for discussion?
Not up for discussion.
Okay. I have to agree with everybody about the trim and the gable windows. It's clunky and oversized and should be reduced in size. I'm fine with the sliding door and the lights and the fence. And I think the door needs to be replaced and should be replaced at the same time that you're doing the rest of the house. That would be my preference. The main house. I think in the short term, if you have someone around here who can go hunt up some sash windows to put in those windows as a temporary situation until you get back, you have the vinyl windows on the inside. If a bottom sash is there, then we aren't going to care, or we may care, but we can't do anything about it. But it will get you to a point where you don't have to worry about that until the time comes when the house is completely beautifully redone and you can either repair the existing wood windows and put a new simple storm on the inside, or you can get replacement windows when you get replacement windows for the house, because you'll get them cheaper at that point. That'd be my recommendation. But other than that, I think it's a cute little use of an old dairy barn as a B&B. And it's going to be a wonderful place to, have your friends and family stay when they come visit. So I think that's fine. And I can support this retroactive hop with the comments that I made, and the staff will work with you on ways to deal with these few issues. But other than that, it looks like a cute little dairy barn. Thank you. Milk cows, dairy barn. I'm I'm a city girl. What do I know from milk cows and dairy barns? Thank you. Moving on, do we have tax credits to review?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have the Group 3 tax credits for your consideration tonight.
Would anybody like to make a motion to approve these tax credits for Group 3 2023? Anybody?
Sure, I'll make a motion, Commissioner Haynes. Move that the Historic Preservation Commission approve the tax credits for calendar year 2023, Group 3, as outlined by the memorandum dated May 7th, 2024.
Do I hear a second?
This is Commissioner Galway. I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The tax credits are approved in the interim until they're all sent at the end of the year. Meeting minutes.
We have 2 sets of meeting minutes tonight for your consideration, April 3rd and April 17th.
I have not read the meeting minutes, so I would really like somebody else who has read the meeting minutes to make a motion.
This is Commissioner Galway. I have read the meeting minutes, and I make the motion that we approve the April 3rd and the April 17th meeting minutes.
Thank you, Commissioner Galway. Do I hear a second?
Yeah, this is Commissioner Pelletier, a second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. No, not on meeting minutes. Commission items, do we have any commission items? Let's move on to staff items. Do we have any staff items?
One staff item this evening, staff is looking for a vote from the commission to approve staff sending a letter on behalf of the commission for the public hearing of the county council for the Great Seneca Minor Master Plan Amendment. You'd previously sent a letter of support to the planning board for their public hearing. So if you do vote to allow me to send a letter, I will work with our chair, our vice chair of the commission, Karen Burdett, to write that letter and get it sent off. The council's public hearing is within the next 2 weeks.
Okay, then I would like to make a motion that we approve staff writing and sending the letter on the Great Seneca Plan. And do I hear a second on my motion?
Commissioner Haynes, I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? Thank you. And with that, if there's no other items, then I believe we are adjourned.